You don't want to be waves.
But yeah, the amount of lot that's covered by concrete or buildings could be a lot, so
Yeah.
that should be a calculation on your site plan.
All right,
Okay. So are we just waiting then for a complete packet to do the COA, okay? Do we need anything else then?
Now, the complete packet will have some form of landscaping plan in it also.
You can give us an idea of, plans for landscape, if it's all xeriscape or rockwood or what, that we kind of want to see something in when it gets to be appropriate time if you need to make changes or.
I mean, you don't need to get fancy, you do a hand sketch on the fly.
Yeah.
it won't be fancy, it'll just be.
But the site plan does need to be accurate, so we can identify how much impervious surface you have.
Yep, so, okay, I can do that. It's easy
That
enough.
does need to be accurate.
All right,
Alrighty,
okay, I don't think you need a motion, do we? Mr. Chairman?
No.
Okay, all right then. Looking for a big old packet next time.
Yeah.
I will get it together as soon as possible.
Okay.
Hopefully,
It's good to see the progress over the past couple of months. It's,
we're moving along. In the last 2 weeks, not much has gone.
the computer is not easy.
We'll get it all together one of these days. Alright,
So it's about the same.
see you on
And I have some things that are like that. So
Like Brian.
they're all kind of the same.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Okay, now we got staff updates. Hey, good.
Hello.
Mark ever get on?
No.
Oh, okay.
He didn't tell me he was gonna be on Zoom, so I didn't specifically make him a panelist.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, the Zoom link is always on the agenda, just so you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've called all the people who have expired COAs. The only two people that I expect will be back in front of you are the Georgetown Community School, the Flagstone project. They got a COA for last year. They have not started or pulled a permit for anything, so Mel will tell whoever is gonna be handling that project that they have to see you again. And then Jeff Zamartoni's house at 1114, sorry, that cut off Griffith Street is where that one is. That one also expired, so he'll have to bring that in front of you again. I don't know if he's maybe.
Is that the whole house?
Yes, that's an entire house.
Oh, that's the one behind me.
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Okay.
So hopefully there won't be a bunch of changes and you guys can just stamp it.
I remember that.
I called Vincent Tanko today and he didn't pick up, so I'll let you know if there's any updates on that. Mark told me on Monday that,
On, Vince,
yeah,
already, even sort of on Mark. We have been in communication with these folks. But we do have to decide, and maybe you can talk to Rick about this, when is this communication game
over,
over?
yeah,
Because the next step is that we legally cite them. And, if we have to, the 700 Taos and Koski's, these two.
Yeah.
And I know Mark said, he's going on it, but if they, because citing them means that at some point she's set a court date to discuss it. But we have been after this for what, a year now? And at some point, we have to say that yes, I'll do it tomorrow is,
Not acceptable.
not acceptable.
okay. I will talk to Rick
We
about that
understand
date.
Tomorrow's another day.
Maybe 30 days from now, if he hasn't started, then that seem reasonable to you?
Talk it over with Rick, because we have given him other kinds of time with deadlines,
Right.
which he has responded in those times, but he has not responded with
Is
work.
there anything in the code?
No, not a
Okay,
specific
there's
timeline.
no timelines.
No, the code does not include timelines, but it includes, as a matter of fact, it doesn't include that we can cite them without ever notifying, we're doing the pre-notifications out of the politeness and the fact that citing somebody is a legal action, we would prefer not to do that. But if that's what it's gonna take, then that's, I think we have to decide that, and at some point along the line, it's gonna take that in some case. Because, that's the way the world is.
Yes. Well, Mark says this week is when he's starting, so. we'll see.
Yeah, and if that shows up, that's wonderful.
Holy House, and Lindsay got to go look at it too. The porch that was put up, was it?
So that,
It's beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
I hope that we can encourage them to restore the rest of the house. Now that they have invested in it, I think it would be lovely, and maybe we could even send them a little thank you note.
Good, yeah.
And we look forward to seeing History Colorado put that house to good use.
Yeah. Good.
Our group chat today was a satellite office, but yeah, I don't think that'll actually. We'll see. They were excited to see.
Yeah, yes, well, I think.
Awesome.
that, you know,
It is a cool house, and it's not just
very-
saving a little shack, it's
Yeah,
quite,
beautiful.
quite interesting.
Yeah, it is, so. Can we write them a nice note?
Yeah,
We have to get
I can,
Johnson.
you want me to do that? Then I can-
Yeah, draft it at least so that we can see and, because the railroad folks are very inventive these days, I'm sure they can figure out some way to actually use that structure to enhance what's going on up there.
That'd be cool. I don't have any Excel updates.
Well, my Excel updated today is a very upsetting update. Well, yeah, one dramatic thing sort of changed yesterday afternoon, and it is a dramatic thing to have change. I received a telephone call from the Chapeau's office, that said, they've made the determination that the decommissioning was not an adverse effect on the landmark district. And that makes our request to own a powerhouse a lot more difficult. So they are basing this on the dates that were established in 1976 for our dates of significance for the landmark district. Our initial dates of significance that were established in 1976 were 1859 to 1893. And that powerhouse didn't exist in 1893. And the original dates were based on the fact that there was the silver crash in 1893. That presumed that what this town did was they heard about a silver crash and they shuttered everything up and everybody left. Because the Chapeau's office said to me, well, by the time this was built, there were less than 300 people in town. That's not true. And what is true is that in 2014, when we did our comprehensive survey of the landmark district, including Silver Plume, including everything, we sat down with the National Park Service and said, you know, this date is a problem. And they concurred. And they said, okay, you can say, you know, that's your original date. You can operate with the extended date to 1907. And there is reason for that. And the reason for that is described in the survey that we did in, you know, the reason that 1907 became the date is because that is when the mining and milling finally started to really fail and people really started to leave. I mean, after they heard of the silver crash, they actually upped the production of mills because one of the ways to survive it is to produce more. And so actually, we had a lot of mills built, we had a lot of things built, and some of them were the power things, but at this point, the Chapeau's office has talked to the National Park Service, and they say, but that was not, we did not go through the formal process of applying to the National Park Service to extend the date. We did discuss it. We discussed it at length in 2013 with the Park Service. They advised us not to do that. And the reason they advised us not to do that was, first of all, the procedure is long, difficult, and expensive. But secondly, because it would put all of our boundaries in question. And we like our boundaries. Our boundaries were, and the other part of it is the Chapeau's office said, and the buildings have to relate to the purpose of the district. And the purpose of the district is to preserve the history of silver mining. Now, I said to the gentleman, that means that all of the houses that were built even in that period don't. And they said, oh, yes, because they were built to serve the mining industry. I said, what do you think the power plant was for? Right.
Yeah.
This is not, and the power plant is its own National Register district. So there is an adverse effect impact to that. And, but it was I was in a parking lot trying to trade my cars with a bunch of my son and his friends.
Yeah.
What you see there was not what was originally on that site, there's stuff that was there, like the gas plant and all kinds of other stuff that led to that.
Yes, oh, I know. It was not a good moment for me. So in the middle of Bedlam, it was certainly not a good moment. So I've been walking around thinking about it today, and what I'm going to do, because the survey we did in 13-14 was reviewed by the Park Service, it was reviewed by the Chapeau's office. Everybody was in agreement with that paragraph that's on every one of those forms. Does it fit in the period between 59 and 93, or does it fit in the period between 93 and 1907? Everybody reviewed all those forms, and apparently, the Chapeau's office is in a real hard line at the moment. And part of the reason I'm going into all this detail is I hope you ask a couple of questions when you get back.
I can talk to Mitch.
What?
I can talk to Mitch.
Yes, but Mitch is gonna be very deliberate, and he is going to say, this is what the
He is
piece of
very
paper says, and this is the piece, and he's already called Justin Henderson, who is.
Okay, I was gonna
And
ask.
he's called John Olson, and he's told the Park Service, and I suspect he's told FERC that, no, you don't have an adverse impact, which just,
Oh, my word,
yes, oh, my word is right.
without ever interacting with us on.
Yes, well, because we don't get to determine whether we're historic or not. I mean, we're the little people.
This is really slippery.
The ones doing the work.
Yes, this is really, and I said to Mitch that, we're going to ask for that power plant anyway. And
Regardless.
yeah, regardless, and we're gonna ask for it in the big decommissioning. But I am just sort of taken back by the whole thing. The power plant itself is a National Register eligible site. Excel does not allow it to be put on the register because Excel doesn't allow properties that it owns to be put on the register. The Georgetown Hydroelectric District, the dam, the penstock, and the power plant is a National Register district. It's just not a landmark district. And it's the landmark status that was giving us the extra oomph. You don't mess with landmark districts.
Yeah.
And I just,
So do we talk to a lawyer about this? What do we do?
I think that actually, no, we talked to the National Park Service about this, is
You
what we
did, yeah.
do.
Talk to
And
them.
so I'm going to reach out to first of all, Greg Jarvis, who worked for the National
Yeah.
Park Service.
Oh,
for
yeah,
his
yeah.
entire career and is part of our effort. And then I'm going to get a hold of Justin Henderson. I'm going to pull the grant file because it will give me the names of the, and Astrid Lieberman, who is now with Park Service, was at that point with the state office and was part of the architect of doing this, of making the extension sort of a known fact. But they are correct, we did not go through the national process to change it.
So,
Their advice, actually.
okay, but at the very beginning of this entire process, we got a million speeches from different people at Excel about how they really wanted to make this process as efficient as possible, support the community, blah, 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 blah. But now,
They didn't do this.
no, they didn't do this.
No, they didn't do this. The State Historic
The state,
Preservation
yeah.
Office did this.
Well,
They are now informing Excel that they do not have an adverse impact on the land district.
what, and they didn't tell us that?
Well, they called me up to tell me that that's what they were doing yesterday.
And this is the state historical,
Preservation Office, who is the one who actually negotiates with FERC for
yeah,
how you handle it. But Excel is FERC's agent in this. Excel, FERC tells Excel that you can handle this because Excel is the person, is the entity that wants the license. So FERC is saying, but what FERC has told Excel is, figure out what is good mitigation. Figure out with the locals, let's not get into a mess over this, figure out with the locals but if they don't have an adverse impact on a landmark district, Excel can look at us and FERC can look at the State Historic Preservation Office and say, we have no adverse impact there, we don't have to do anything with these folks. Now, they have to do something because they themselves are a historic site, so they do have an adverse impact on that building,
So-
which is a historic site.
so the people who called you were the state historical
Preservation Office.
preservation office. Do they have a mission statement?
Well, it's not in their mission to, yes, sure, they have a mission statement, but it was not in their, what Mitch is doing is following the letter of the law. Because quite frankly, he fears, and it's unfortunate to have somebody in that position who is afraid of federal agencies. Because if you have somebody there who is afraid of federal agencies, no, they will not try ever. And he's afraid that the federal agency will simply take over the process, which they could do.
All right, so
Which they could do, Betsy, so you gotta understand, if they got really crosswise, FERC could say, we're not playing, we're gonna take the whole thing to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation in Washington, and we will just let them decide of what we're going to do. So we have trouble, I will, when we have our meeting on May 9th,
yeah,
I will be prepared to say, look, this is the arrangement we had with the National Park Service, and we based a whole inventory on this understanding. And so every inventory form you have got for everything in this town either checks the box from 59 to 93 or checks the box from 93 to 07. And that was the agreement, and please check with this person in your National Park Service and this person in your National Park Service. Do I think it will make a difference? No. Do I think Excel might still give us a powerhouse? Yes.
Yeah, there's other reasons for that.
Exactly, there are other reasons, but I found it a huge disappointment Because with you, if one had had somebody who was aggressive on our behalf and not aggressive on, in a sense on FERC's behalf, because at this point, they're gonna look at Excel and say, well, your cultural resource report is wrong because you don't have an adverse impact. And the minute you tell a company they don't,
Well, it's a lot of hook for all kinds of stuff.
it gets them off the
Oh,
hook
yeah.
for all
I
kinds of
mean,
stuff.
this could really snowball.
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, that's what you get the hybrid team for. Do what we can do.
Yep, it is.
Was there anything on that site before the power?
Oh, yes, the Watchir Mill was there.
The what?
The Watchir Mill was there. It was a site for mills, for large silver mills. And that's why John Sprunger the other day was saying to us, we need, if they're gonna do an assessment of that site, we want a hazardous materials assessment. It's not that that produces hazardous materials, it's just that all the mills in front of it certainly could have produced hazardous materials in that ground and site. So that site has always been an industrial site for this town, from its earliest days.
Does that give us any leverage to push the date?
At this point, I don't think so. Because it's not the same building, it's not the same. And he's saying that actually, Mitch was saying that the production of power does not relate to the purpose of our landmark district. The production of power relates to everything.
It does.
But anyway, so that's my Excel report and there will be more later. I don't want to spend a whole evening on it, but you needed to know.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. I don't have anything as dramatic as that for the rest of my reports.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, we're happy about that. This is true. I still have not contacted 1036, sorry. Bighorn Crossing has submitted their building permits application, so that is currently in the hands of Dan Wester to review. The structural part of it, Bob has also taken a look at it and determines that it does match the COA that was submitted to you originally, so.
Yeah, except for the dumpsters were not
Right.
on the COA. The last time we looked at dumpsters with them was back when they did the apartments.
Yeah.
That's where the wood thing came from. So.
They are coming in on May 9th, if they turn in the application, which they said they would, but they have not done it yet, to get a COA for the dumpsters.
Streetlights.
So,
Well, that's in the packet that was submitted and is referenced in, or, it was reviewed for the COA. What I saw on their site plan came from that packet. So the Cobra headlights and the 20-foot poles and all that never got picked up in the COA review on the micro apartments that we did back in like 22 sometime, or 23, or, over a year, a long time ago. We can talk to them about that when they come in. But, I mean, we've already approved it.
we didn't talk about that.
I was surprised when I found,
I know there's pictures in the packet and everything of the.
oh yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that I saw in the permitting package. It's the same stuff that was in the
Okay,
COA.
their COA is expired, correct?
No, because we renewed
No,
it,
it was, yeah, I don't,
we just
No,
renewed
but
it.
don't let them come in cold to that. There is a real confusion from the commission about those streetlights, and tell them that,
Okay,
because that's not the type of lighting that's in the rest of the
We've
district.
talked about with them so many times on other things.
Yes,
They
and
should
it's
know
not the
that.
lighting that it was approved for the rest of the district, and, no, even Excel doesn't put Cobra lights in this town.
right, well, we did legally, they have a COA with the Cobra lights as part of that package.
I understand that, but I don't want them walking in here and then we're gonna we're gonna say
Right,
that we made an erroneous sort of presumption on those lights,
yeah,
and that is our fault. But we would
Like-
like their cooperation, and, I understand where we are with that, but if they know in advance, this is not the kinds of lights that were approved for the other part of the,
Right. They did get Bob's letter, and that was included in the letter, and they said in the email response to that letter that none of that was a big deal, and they would be happy to change stuff, so hopefully, when they come in for the dumpster approval, we
yeah,
have.
but do let them know that the lights are, you know, that we understand the position we're in, but we understand it was our error.
Okay.
But we were,
And looking at the construction, which the structural and, you know, the building part. I noted that, and it's the same thing I believe that they had originally, but I looked up online, they talk about Timberline CS shingles. And the thing that stands out is that they're, you know, environmental, you know, sustainability thing, but, where is it? Help save on cooling costs because, they are our most reflective shingles. I don't know that that's a big deal or not, because it's an asphalt shingle, but it apparently reflects
Heat or light?
heat. Well, I mean, probably infrared is what it's, I don't know any more than that, I was hoping that.
I don't know, the reflective part.
what?
Well,
The reflective part
if
is,
it's reflecting heat, that's one thing.
that's one thing,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the light.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, can,
Yeah.
see the
Yeah,
specs?
I just pulled this off the internet. Brett, you can have. Take a look at that.
Take a look at those.
I mean, I look at it, it's, you know, it maybe has they're not white shingles or anything like that. They're just
But they're not black, yeah, they're not, they're dark.
well, they can be, I mean, they're. So that may be a concern, but, you know, I don't know.
Okay, and then I just think it'd be good
You
for
can
us,
Oh, okay. Take that one down.
I think it'd be good for us to just review the process for construction.
We are talking about the apartments that are already built.
No,
No.
We're talking about
Oh,
the
Ten,
five buildings.
five little.
Oh.
Looked at it.
Okay. Wrong project.
Five little buildings, and we don't want the five little buildings that go the lights where everybody else has some other kind of light. I mean,
Well,
that.
there's street lights, the building lights are, you know, they look okay, you understand, they're
Yeah, but
dark sky, but the street lights are,
But they had streetlights planned for some of the
yeah,
rest.
it's like half a dozen, 10 maybe,
Yeah.
around the area.
Yeah, and we don't want focal lights. so.
No.
yeah, it's actually called Lakeview Flats right now, no, but I've just been referring to it as Bighorn, so.
I thought we were talking about-
Yeah. Understandable confusion.
And then the dumpsters that they've kind of projected something to be metal.
Yeah, it's the same basic design that they had before, but,
You know, predictably, the wind.
yeah,
Instead of them all being trashed within the first year and then never getting replaced, I'd rather have them, you know, not shiny metal, of course, but if they're a nice sturdy frame so that they're,
They can at least be friendly to, you know.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, they're just, it's gonna look more industrial than if they had, wood, and my thought were, no reason they couldn't put cedar
Right.
cladding on
Yeah,
metal.
you.
They'd still be as strong and as durable, but I mean, they would soften that industrial look.
Yes.
That was my thought.
And do we have anything in the book that refers to that?
I don't know if
That's a
maybe
question.
our next meeting is when we should be having these conversations with them, does that
Yes.
feel appropriate?
Yes, I think that's true. Yeah, you do have
dumpster enclosure.
dumpster enclosures somewhere.
Okay, so we just
Right
need
now.
to, and at one time, Tom Phillips had made us sort of a prototype.
Yeah, there's something
Design.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have a prototype out there for dumpsters. I don't know if you've seen it, but yeah.
It should be put in the book.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, but I remember him bringing that in, so.
The other thing I wanted to just touch on is that there was some confusion on what the process is for reviewing and dealing with deviations from the COA after COA has been issued. And we kind of got crosswise with Jerry on that, and Jerry and I went back and forth half a dozen times with emails, and when I told him what all happened, I think we're on the same page now. My understanding was, and the way that we've been operating is that once a COA is issued, that's kind of the benchmark that we compare what actually gets, when they submit building permits for approval, or construction documents for approval, we are supposed to look at them and look to make sure that the requirements that we have are reflected in those documents.
Yeah.
That were, the requirements that came out of the COA are reflected. I did that, I wrote that up, sent that to Kasia. Noted things that I thought were discrepancies, and I made the call to bring it to DRC for discussion to see if this group agrees that, yeah, those things they're important enough that we should pursue it. We don't pursue it, the town pursues it. And we had that meeting last time we were here, we talked about those things, and that's with the Cobra lights and so forth. And I was wrong, because I didn't notice that part, I didn't realize that.
It's okay, we would.
That we hadn't addressed that, and it was there. The landscaping comments were the same thing, it had the zero escape type landscaping, but all that after our discussion and what our thoughts were, went back to Kasia, and then the town, because she's designated by the town as the authority for that. So the process I think we're using is correct. The only thing that wasn't documented is I don't think there's any kind of a formal document from the town administrator who the designated person is. We didn't think he needed one, and he wasn't here when I took on that responsibility that came from
Right.
Kent, I think.
I'll add one thing that was my understanding is that if you were to bring concerns like that back to the board, it needs to be on the agenda and the applicant needs to be informed ahead of time so that they can represent themselves if you're having those discussions. Was the one other thing that I took out of those emails from Jerry.
Yes, and I concur with that, because essentially what the applicant has to do is either change their construction plan or come for an amendment. And when you found things on Marv's construction plans on something, it was windows or something. Yes, the applicant was informed by the town that the construction plans were not in compliance with the COA. And then if they wanted changes, either they had to make the construction plans compliant, or they could come to this board for an amendment. And Marv came for an amendment, and we
Right.
amended the plans and done. And so I think that in general is the process.
I agree. I would like to clarify with Jerry, if I look at the review by an individual, which in this case is me, whether it's at a building permit application time or at completion of construction waiting for COA. If whoever's doing the review thinks it warrants some discussion within the team, I don't know,
We have to notify the applicant about that.
even for the discussion,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
because I would think that would delay the process.
No, I think you have to notify the applicant, because essentially the applicant does either need to ask for an amendment or change the plan.
Even if we during our discussion, we decide this is not worth worrying about.
If they have submitted construction plans that are not completed in this, not what the COA says, it's worth worrying about.
Yeah.
There is not the minor thing that, okay, let's say these were, because where do you draw the line?
Right.
So there
There's
is,
no point in us doing it at all if there's gonna change.
Okay, I agree with that.
because it's very hard, and yeah, when it's small window changes and those kinds of things, yeah, it may sound silly, but the day that somebody's changing a whole set of windows and doing, you know, that gets to be not silly at all.
Yeah, and mainly the things that have we've let kind of slide is when we do a final inspection for a COA or for an occupancy permit.
If you've used the wrong material on the porch railing, it's going to be the judgment of the people who are out there, whether they're going to make a
Right.
deal about that or whether they're just going to sort of go.
And we,
But
but
we're not
we make a
putting
rec-
that on paper.
well, we do, we write it down, we make a recommendation to the town to either don't issue this is important enough, don't issue it until it's resolved, or what we've been doing lately, because things aren't finished, like landscaping.
Yeah.
Landscaping is never finished when they wanna get an occupancy permit, so what we're doing now is recommending that the town issue a temporary occupancy permit with a time limit to get the landscaping done.
Yeah.
So.
Whether they do that or not, it's totally up to the town, but that's what I've been doing,
So they want their permit.
so.
Very, very minor technical thing. Dan informed me that for residences, we cannot issue a temporary CO. We can issue a conditional CO. And it's more or less the same thing.
It's virtually the same.
Yeah, but I just wanna let you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So I mean, there is still, a hook in there that says,
Yes.
and,
They have
and,
to-
and the code even allows us to go back later because it's in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Which that was Jerry's thing. I reminded him of that. And he said, yeah, some smart lawyer did that. But I mean, that gives us the right to
Right.
go back like
Yeah.
on,
The DRC has
Or
teeth. You can pull
1036.
a CO from somewhere if they don't come into compliance, so. Yeah.
And we do have the town of Georgetown dumpster enclosure design. Just
yeah,
curiosity.
and it's pretty similar to what they came up with.
Yeah, it's very.
But it's wood.
Yeah, but they should, the fact that they have not submitted anything to me today tells me they probably will not be on the next meeting, but they are intending to come in to get a COA for the dumpster enclosure or dumpsters in general. And so I think that would be a good time to talk to them about what we're hoping they will change, not now.
I think that's true, but they should know that that's going to be on the conversation list. I agree with that, because we have to keep going.
Well, and they've been sent that information.
Yeah.
They know that.
Okay, revitalizing Main Street grant, Bob actually has more info on this right now than I do.
Yeah, and that was my third item, is Grove Street sidewalks. I started looking at that, and it's, the area in question is roughly about 1,000 feet, so it's a lot. However, if you walk down the street, and I've started putting together the details, and I'll do like a section every day or when I get to it, but two things I wanted to bring to your attention. The paving that has been there's paving that's like 4 feet wide, like in front of Jones' house. And I think that it's great, it gives us about a 3-foot plus planter along the street.
I don't
Three.
think it's quite 3 feet.
Yeah, it is.
Is it, did you get it?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I didn't really intend to do the 4 feet. I hired someone to do that and I thought it was gonna be bigger, but
well, there are other sections that are there's variable widths.
yeah,
Right.
The standard down at the park is 5 feet.
yeah.
I thought the standard in town was 5 feet, it's only on certain areas, because others,
Yeah.
it's huge.
Yeah.
So,
And then we're talking about the tree line.
no, we're talking about
On
paving.
this page,
Oh, sorry.
we're talking about how wide the sidewalk is, how wide.
So,
The standards width for and I know this was my house.
Yeah, it's up.
The standard width for getting a handicap
Oh, that's
on the
fine.
street.
You took a picture of Keith's van.
I think you got a picture of my van.
yeah, I did. I got a whole lot of pictures, whole lot of pictures,
Yeah,
but,
the standard
Yeah.
width is 5 feet.
and I realize that. So, that's something we need to decide on.
But it can be intermediate, it doesn't have to be continuous.
What?
You can have passing zones, it doesn't have to be continuous.
That's correct.
No,
Well,
doesn't have to
like,
be
if you
continuous.
look at the very front of this one on the corner, you know, there's, I don't know if there's another foot there where the telephone pole is. And there is a telephone pole at this end too, right on my driveway. Right on.
The other thing is that one of the things that is really consistent about this town is that nothing is consistent.
Well, and that was my next point.
That's
You
right.
go down Rose Street, it's a good example, because there's everything from nothing to nice newly replaced sidewalks that are 4 feet wide. Across the street, there's a section of, in front of, I don't know which house it is, I didn't think, I've got a picture of it, but I got like
Right.
50 pictures. But 5 feet wide, a little bit narrower street than here, that is nice flagstone, it's old and it's not, it doesn't need to be touched, it looks good. In front of the Buckley garage and that whole part of that block, that's all concrete and it's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few areas where it's falling and so forth, but it's not as bad as some of the flagstone sidewalks we have in town.
Actually, a good color and it's a nice.
Yeah, I mean,
It's,
if we were to do that historic street, what do we wanna do? I mean, it's,
We want to do, I think, you know, what Henry Neisel did in our historic picture, because the period, it was only 1892, was that he wanted flagstone that ran from downtown to the park.
So it's
The
here.
park was relatively new and he got flagstone all the way around the park and he wanted to bring flagstone to it. And I
was
think
it on
that
one side or
it was on both. But it only went to the park.
the?
And then there was flag around the park, but it didn't extend to 11th Street and it didn't extend in front of the houses that were across the park beyond Chandler's. There was no sidewalk out there. So if you're gonna be historically accurate, but that sidewalk, that original sidewalk came in a couple of different sizes depending on whose house you were in front of.
well, good, so that would allow us to go and use
4 to
some
5,
discretion with 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Certainly wouldn't wanna go any less than 4.
No, and nothing appears to be less than 4, because even if you dig
Yeah.
out in front of Chandler's, and in front of Chandler's is wonderful because that one piece that's sitting and sort of towards the street is the step off from a carriage. So you can step onto something to step down to your sidewalk.
I mean, would that be our goal? I mean, in my sense, one goal, which would be valid, would be, we want to restore what is historically correct. Which means that, okay, we would look out, if we've got a concrete section in there and it needs to be repaired, take it out with flagstone.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Now, what happens around the Conoco station, because that became a service station. And so that concrete dates from those periods. But the building itself was always used, it wasn't a,
It wasn't a gas station originally, it was,
but it wasn't a residence.
Pythias
No.
Hall.
Hmm?
Knights of Pythias Hall.
It
yeah,
was nice,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
really.
But they did have gas pumps at one time, at one point.
what I would propose doing around there is, they've got, on the Rose Street side, they've got the concrete apron that comes out like
Yeah,
this.
I leave it.
Leave that, the concrete that's on both sides of it is pretty well broken up anyway. Take that out and put it in, because you need to have it's like a driveway there.
Yeah.
And any place where we have a driveway, the house,
Should be the concrete.
a couple that's got the
Yeah.
PT Cruises in front of it all the time. That ought to have a concrete apron to bring that driveway up.
Yeah, I think we understand the concrete aprons coming.
I mean, and we do it with our, you know.
Well, we've done it all the way down the street here.
Sure.
People don't think about that.
Well, you have to get handicapped, you know,
Yeah, aprons, but you are.
no curb.
So, this picture, which is right across the street from me, over here, That's all concrete that's in bad shape now.
I mean, it's
Well,
in bad shape
in
for
places.
concrete, but it's really not,
Well, some
it's
places.
not all that bad. That, I took the worst picture.
In front of Vivian's
It
house,
could
it's
be-
actually really good,
it's
still
really
down.
good, yeah.
Yeah. But what I was gonna say is if you're gonna replace flagstone or something, think about it here, because this, I was just showing Brent, when it really rains hard and water comes from down by Betsy all the way down the street, the water is up over the sidewalk to this, you can see where the water has been on the front right to their step. And so if there's a way to maybe elevate a little bit
Well, I mean, you could
to avoid the
look
water.
at that, yeah.
Yeah, water situation, because right now, the way the pans are in that corner, it's really bad. Water.
Does this require us to flag all the way down the street on both sides?
Yes.
Does this require us to change the guidelines?
No.
Yeah, yeah.
See where it's
I see.
just broken up.
We would need to make sure it allows between 4 and 5 feet.
Yeah.
Something like that. The other question I would have is, there will need to be some kind of a discussion with,
We gotta get everybody, what?
Way too much on the computer.
No, not you, he's talking about.
Oh, okay.
I just wanna bring up town code puts the responsibility for maintaining your sidewalk in front of your house on the property owner.
Yes.
We need to clearly understand what that means, and if the town were to decide to do a project to restore this street, what are the implications? I mean, I'm sure you shell out some significant dollars to have that done.
Yeah.
And for the town to go across the street and do all that for free, I don't know what the implications are.
Yeah, well, I think we do have it.
But that's something, and Rick, I talked to Rick about that in cases, so they'll work with Jeremy. There's nothing precluding the town from doing it, particularly in areas where there is a safety.
Well, and in areas where that it has to do with your historical accuracy, because what will happen is then, people on other streets will say, well, I need to have a sidewalk too, make me a sidewalk too. Well,
Yeah.
I can't ask you for a sidewalk in front of my house, there has never been a sidewalk in front of my house, so it is not something that the town would, you know, on a lot of our streets, that's why we need to finish the streetscape thing right alongside of this, and a lot of our streets never had sidewalks.
And that's an important thing that we need to get done
Right, right.
in this context, so.
Yeah,
So you
It
have
is.
a map
Are
of
we
where
know,
the
Yeah.
sidewalks were.
are we looking at like whether it's the flagstone or whatever, going all the way down Rose, all the way to the end? I was just like, is there any, like, thoughts going further with it past the park?
To the park is
We
the
take it to
historic.
the park.
Yeah.
we take it to the park, and you know, I know people who would live between the park and 11th Street would love it to get extended
Yeah.
there, but if we're doing this on a historic
Well, it should
basis.
follow
the- yeah.
get
We
to
need, that would be
I
the,
guess my
Well,
question is, with new
this-
construction, do you have to put sidewalks in?
No, you do not.
This grant is not strictly a historic grant. It's revitalizing Main Street. It's about
Yeah.
transportation, so.
But what we're doing is saying, what is our rationale for the town doing this, not what the grant rationale is. What is our rationale for the town doing it? Because if we do not have a rationale, then anybody who does want a piece of sidewalk in front of their house is gonna say, dear town, do this.
Mhm.
And we're going to say, you know, this is a piece of our historic preservation that we put our flagstone sidewalks where the flagstone was. And one of the reasons we don't expect the property owner to do that, because Tower Street should get them too. And
Amen to
people
that.
come.
yeah, they should get a curb so that the water doesn't rush in my front door on Tower Street.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the street is higher than the house.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, but the street needs to be cut down, that's a whole different discussion. The
Yeah.
streets need badly to be cut down. the George Streets do. Rose Street, when we redid it, was cut down.
In my water line froze. and-
Yes, I'm sure your water line froze, but the street went, it's original.
They're all just trade-offs.
There are-
Yeah, our,
But no,
Rose
Casey, I
Street
agree
was
with
so
what
much
you
of it all
said,
right
but we have to have a rationale that works.
So
for
I,
our president- where this is the president.
are we in agreement that the focus of this should be historic restoration?
Yes,
oh, yeah.
that's what we're.
So that, and that,
But
that being said, there's some work that needs to be done on this, and I don't know what the timing is for the grant, for the Vitalize Main
It's
Street.
a rolling.
Yeah, there may be another opportunity like in September,
Yes,
I think there's
So-
one in July and then there's one in
yeah, we
September.
won't make July.
Today's the deadline for April.
Yeah, we didn't make it,
Oh.
July, I doubt it, because I got too much other stuff to do. But September, we may take a shot, so this would be a project for next year.
yeah.
Because we wouldn't be able to get flagstone,
Mhm.
I mean, it takes months to get that stuff cut.
What I'll say is if we want, and you know, this is the next item on my list is ARPA funding. If we want any ARPA funding though, we will need to know a general scope of how much we think it's gonna cost to ask the Board of Selectmen if they wanna set aside any of those ARPA funds for this project.
Well, to do the sidewalk, it's roughly $75 a square foot.
Okay,
You do 1,000 feet times 5, you're up $350,000, $400,000.
does that include labor?
And your revitalized Main Street grant does not.
That's based on what
to
we
that
paid
level.
for.
right, I think it's 250.
It's 250, and believe me, we don't wanna get a big one until until Argentina is. Let's
So,
not even get into Argentina. On the ARPA funds, I do think that the consideration of the streets, but it's a serious consideration of the streets, we have got to stop just throwing pavement down on whatever is there. And that's what we have been doing. We've been adding material to these streets. We now have that little bridge over here so it doesn't drain. So water puddles on a wooden bridge, because we have built up the edges so that the bridge can no longer drain. So I hope that some of our funds will be addressed to appropriately tackling the streets. And this is, in the historic zone, yes, but also in the other zones appropriately tackling them. Yeah, the
Yeah,
streets.
it all ties back to drainage.
Yes, but-
We've
but
done
they've
things
gotta
in this
get
town
cut
that
down.
make it worse.
Yeah, but we've gotta get those streets cut down, and I'm watching the measurements go on out on Argentine in front of the firehouse. And what happened is, water and sewer came along and they had to take out the asphalt.
Mhm.
You've now filled that whole section with millings, and they're gonna have somebody come along and pave it. And they're gonna pave right on top of those
Yeah.
millings. And so there'd be a slight hump, and you won't notice it driving, but that's what we've been doing, and it's horrendous on our drainage. The reason that Rose Street drains at all is that between Second and Fifth Street, the Central Federal Lands, when they came and redid the street, cut it down about 18 inches.
Mm.
And so it no longer drains into the yards on the west side of the street, it no longer drains down Third Street, it no longer drains down Fourth Street, and the drainage comes through town and actually goes where it's supposed to.
We should talk about Main Street by 10:02.
Yes, well, so,
Crazy.
Anyway,
We're having
I-
crazy-
That's another thing.
it's another thing, but the ARPA funds, it's a huge thing throughout this town.
Yeah.
Treating our streets right.
Planning
do
on
we
it.
have, with regard to the sidewalks, do we have an illustration of all the streets and what they were historically?
No, the planning commission, way back, maybe about the year 2000, did a sidewalk study. And I have no idea where that ended up, but it did exactly that, historically, where were the sidewalks? And
We need to find out.
Take that out.
yeah, I should hope we
I
can.
have something, I don't know if it's what the planning commission did, but like Scooter has maps of of different things in the town, and sidewalks is one of them.
But I think he has current maps.
There's, iterations of it,
Yeah.
so.
But that's something that that would be the foundation we need to do a historic.
Right,
Like,
but
where the sidewalk.
we did do that, because I was on the planning commission at the time, and,
You know what year that was?
it was Six Old Men and Me. It was, somewhere around year 2000. Because it was when we did the first plan, the first comp plan for the town.
I mean, we can't be sort of telling people what kind of sidewalks they can have, if we can't base it on the history.
That's right.
And so we
what's in our
need to,
guidance now?
like, it would be great, I moved into the house at 300 Rose Street and I know that there were flagstone sidewalks there, or not. Right?
Yeah, yes, and actually, if you look at the photographic evidence, there's a lot of boardwalk.
Oh,
There is a
interesting.
lot of boardwalk up into the 1890s, even running down the parts of Tower Street.
And that's important to know what.
That's why we put boardwalk in front of the old school, and that's why there's boardwalk in front of the Mahaney building, because if you didn't have flagstone, what you had was boardwalk. And I know everybody said that it wouldn't last. That boardwalk sidewalk's now been in front of the Mahaney building for close to 30 years.
Yeah, the last.
So
It's built like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. it'll be-
And if it drains.
I
So,
do have, are we ready, can we move on from this?
Yeah.
Or
I
we
don't
all-
know, we covered our sidewalk.
does anyone else have any other priorities that they think that you want me to take to the Board of Selectmen as far as what this commission feels ARPA funds should be used for?
Nope.
Yeah, the roads and getting our street lighting straight.
So roads and lights.
Yeah, and street lighting is on Rick's list.
Yes.
Because I've been dealing with that.
Yeah. And
Uh,
what are you talking about on resurvey on your list?
Oh, Lindsay brought that up today, actually. She was saying that, we are supposed to, as a CLG, survey our buildings and get new forms every 5 to 10 years, and the last one was done in 2014, so that was 10 years ago. So we're due.
There are 600 buildings and it costs us, because we don't do it ourselves, because, nobody considers us professional enough. Quite honestly, which is a real pain in the neck. So if, we probably hit closer to 20 years because of the expense of doing it.
You don't need to do all of the buildings at once, it can be phased, and you can look at if there is anything that hasn't been covered, yet, if there's any development post,
One of the reasons we ended up with the big one in 2020 is that we had piecemeal surveys all over the place. And we have to include Silver Plume, we have to include our mountainsides, we have to include a landmark district. We're not just talking about the town of Georgetown.
right, but if you wanted to apply for a CLG grant for survey, you could, and those are no match grants. It wouldn't cover 600 buildings.
It's 600 building sites and traveling on mountains and all of that.
Yeah, but if you wanted to phase it out or target specific buildings that changed over the past 10 years, that would be.
well, we had talked about looking between, 1906 or 7 and.
That's not what they're interested in.
No,
That's fine.
They're
that would
looking
be-
at updating the ones that are already on the list.
Yeah, well, we can, that will not relate to our landmark district, and I think we should do
But
it.
it relates to your CLG. It does. Anything that's in your jurisdiction as a town.
Yes, but that gets, we can, as a town, declare things to be, but we can't declare them to be contributing.
But you could have a local landmark.
We can have a whole set of, we can
Yeah.
have a set of local signs, and we can have a set of what we consider local landmarks. Yes, we can do a set of local landmarks, and that might be interesting too.
Yeah.
That's what we've been talking about, something
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
post
that might be very, very
the
interesting.
landmark.
It would not come out in our I mean, we could show it because we have in our books, everybody listed,
Yeah.
not only contributing but non-contributing, so we could give it a local landmark designation
And like,
for the things that are post
Well, like
1907.
library.
yeah. Mhm.
I mean, we've talked about that. I mean, we definitely have buildings
Yeah,
in town that we recognize are
yes,
historically important.
Mhm.
And
That worked
that's,
out during the previous.
we've talked about, we really kind of need to do that survey and get it on paper.
Yeah,
that would be
and-
interesting, that would be a good, you know, if we put CLG grant on your list here and make it for the, you know, the local landmarks post 1907.
Yeah, I think, you know, as far as, things that would be appropriate for a CLG grant, that's totally within.
Okay.
That eligibility,
That
and
makes sense.
Leadville's doing kind of similar things too, because their National Historic Landmark District, period of significance ends in 1900. Like clearly things were built in Leadville after 1900, they've got a good number that were built, you know, in like 1902, that just aren't,
Yeah.
you know, it didn't work with the check boxes on the National Historic Landmark forms back when it was a national, you know, named National Historic Landmark. So what they're doing so that they can still get tax credits on these like buildings that were built after the period of significance is name them local landmarks. So you still have the incentives available to the property owners, and
Really, I thought you had to have a state designation.
no, since you're a CLG, your local landmarks are eligible for the state
Interesting.
residential and commercial tax credits.
That's very,
So
Yeah,
that's very.
at least a way to get incentives at the state level, in your CLG.
Interesting, very interesting. I didn't realize that.
And you might know this already, but I didn't know this. She was telling me that interiors count for tax credits as well. If it's
Yes, oh, yeah,
restricted.
the tax credits they do, yes, yeah. I mean, yes, because that's the way, you know.
What does that mean?
That means that when, for instance, when Jim Blugerman got tax credits on his house up there, he got the tax credits because it's a historic house and he was, restoring the exterior. He also was redoing the interior, but his entire expense for the whole thing counted. So, yeah, even your appliances, provided that you can't pull them out.
Yeah, so it's heating and.
Yeah, so the whole thing did. When we did Nicel and Anderson, recently for the commercial one,
Yeah.
yes, the exteriors were restored. But for the hardware, it was given heat, electricity and plumbing that it never had before, but they all fit into the tax credit.
To make it usable for the modern day.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah, because that is,
How about new roofs?
Yeah, roofing counts, you know, as long as it's appropriate for the character of the property.
Right. Whew. So you get a tax credit.
well, yeah, there's a whole application procedure and, you know.
How do I find out?
We can.
That's
You know, like Betsy needs a roof.
You have the original shingles and 7 layers on top of it from 1786.
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, but it's not, if you're intentional, you have your whole scope of work, it goes into the state, they look at it and decide whether it is appropriate for, or it's considered an appropriate thing, so there are hoops.
The
Okay.
residential is easier.
Yes, the residential is much easier than
Okay.
commercial.
But, our tax credit specialist, I'm sure would be happy to talk to you guys.
Oh, that would be great.
I can add that to an agenda one night if you want.
That would be great.
And then the public will know, they could hypothetically come up.
Okay. Yeah, there's 7 layers.
But I like that idea.
Starting with the original.
It hasn't taken it out yet.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, yeah, they just keep putting it on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would like to say while we were talking about streets, that I would like for the town to officially adopt the name of that space between the street curb and the sidewalk to be the sidewalk.
Yes, that was my favorite.
Now, that's the side.
That's the planting zone,
So I,
sidewalk with.
I think that Bob, we did your COA thing and basically, are we okay on the road, street, sidewalks
Yeah,
at the
We
moment?
did those two, the only one left is Strauss Park, and that'll be quick.
Good.
I'm done.
Because I have, I'll give you the, where we are. First phase of concrete is done, which is in the park, you can go take a look at it. The forms will get pulled, probably Monday. The, next thing that will be happening in the park, next big thing that will be happening in the park, talked to Lunsford today, they are gonna start work on May 6th. And they are hoping, they'll be shooting to get the park pretty well done, the plaza part, the park, before Memorial. For Memorial Day weekend. It's a lot of work.
That's laying all
So
the flag.
before Fourth of July.
Next week, I'm going to be, tapping town resources and any help I can get to, put the, irrigation sleeves that we're gonna run irrigation piping in, that goes under the flagstone in the ground. Go ahead and, get the seating boulders brought down here. I got Road and Bridge. I talked to Scooter. He's gonna try to get that down on Tuesday. Get them down in place. I'm gonna do some plumbing work inside the irrigation system up and running. Gotta buy some stuff for that. The big thing is at the top of the list is we've been looking at the cottonwood tree in the southwest corner of the park, and we've been talking about that for a long time. Land is coming out tomorrow. They're going to assess the health of that tree, and they're gonna assess the health of the tree, the evergreen tree in the parking lot. If it's determined that that tree is not healthy, there's a lot of dead and the top came off at some point, and
Yeah.
it's probably, my sense is it's probably down to the core, it's probably rotten. We will have a 1 week opportunity to get that tree down. I've got a guy lined up
How do you do that?
who could come down and take the tree down, and you could take one of the parking lot down also on May 2nd.
Who's gonna do that?
I just read it.
Not me.
No, it's not land, it's, the local tree guy from Idaho Springs. Guy with the one round,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, I mean, he did a tree for me, I think it was 10 years ago. But
Are we putting another tree in there?
we could put another tree in it. And, cause I talked to Lamb, I talked to
You
Lunsford
mean for the cottonwood?
for the con, I would like,
Okay,
and I know that's got some significance to it. So I would definitely wanna replace it with something if it's not healthy.
one of the women who was legendary in this town and helped start our Christmas market along with Astrid and C. Gusterman was Odie Taylor. And that tree is Odie's tree. And so I would like.
She's still alive.
No, she passed away some time ago.
Okay.
Her son. Yeah, well, and her son has not.
Yeah, her son.
And her son is very much alive. And
Well,
her son is very much here. Her son heads up the ski patrol at Loveland.
okay,
And has been here all his life.
Wow, okay.
And
but can we rededicate a tree to her?
I would think so. What I need to do is I need to have a little bit of notice. because
Right.
Pip's been around town here a lot in the
Okay.
last few weeks, and he will know instantly, so I have to tell him in advance. That this tree, the tree just is, and it will, that we will replace the tree, and at some point, what I have to do, and I have to not get into it because there's been other fires, is the interpretive, panels for Strauss Park, because when the interpretive panel is up for the Christmas market portion, you will see the crazy lady who was his mother. And
Okay.
she will be part of that, because Christmas market would not be without, so
And
that,
I recognize taking any trees down anywhere, and particularly that one would
that one is just,
is,
Do we want it at a cottonwood?
I don't know, but
I was thinking an evergreen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great.
It's Strauss Park, it's our center for Christmas market.
Right.
Yeah,
Cottonwood doesn't belong there.
well.
yeah, no, I think that's fine.
And we could get a 12 to 14, well, Lunsford said that they'll be getting in some 12 to 14 foot evergreens that are specimen, they're nice trees. We've got they had some 14 foot, but they said they're
We
ugly.
could, dedicate it during Christmas market.
Oh,
Or 4th of July or
Yeah, 4th
something.
of
Or something.
My point, here's the point, we have no time
yeah,
on
we need
this.
to decide.
No.
Yes.
If we're in agreement, if the tree
I will-
cannot be saved,
Well,
I would say we only have, this is the only window we're gonna have, because if we don't cut the tree down is easy, get the damn stump.
Yes, it's done.
I've gotta go see if I can, yank on Banky to come over with his machine and pull the stump out.
I have a concrete guy up in Summit that actually came down and ground up some stumps for us too.
Now, I don't want it ground up, I
I
want
want
it
it
gone,
full.
I want it done.
Done.
Oh, I see.
Because I don't want anything, I don't want, don't sell it because it's gonna have, it'll have probably grass over it rather than flagstone.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be right next to flagstone.
Well, I think it's
Yeah,
a little
no,
rare. If the tree is dying or.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we should do it.
Yes, I will get a message to Pip tomorrow.
If we determine it's not healthy, we'll,
Have you talked to Mary Sims about that for?
nope.
Okay.
Nope. I talked to Rick, as he was passing on the thing, because this just happened. I saw him driving up to some house near me, and I followed him, and I said, what have you done? I wanna talk to you. And I brought him down here and said,
I'll just say.
how much to take this tree down, and I need it as soon as you can get it. He's coming back on the 2nd to do work up there.
Yeah.
He said he could do it on the 2nd of May, which is, I would have liked it like next Monday, and just say tomorrow needs to go. But I can work with that because the first thing Lunsford will do is they will come in and they'll grade and excavate in the park, so that all that's gonna get all dug up a little bit. And we'll cut that material away and they'll get it all set so they can come in with sand and then start laying flagstone.
Okay.
But we may have the park pretty well done
It's looking great.
Yeah.
by Memorial.
Yes.
Probably not the plantings, but the beds will be all prepared and all that, and, I'm negotiating with Kevin on how much he can do, and because I wanna make sure we get it done. Kevin's busy,
Yeah.
It looks great, Bob, and it wouldn't have happened.
It's amazing.
Oh, my God, amazing.
and this way we can get back pretty much within budget. We'll be close.
Budgets are nice too.
Would the cottonwood, would that come out of the project budget or?
Yeah. It costs $1,400 to $1,500 to take that out. He said if we did the pine tree at the same time, he could do them both for about $3. And that's gonna be probably half of it.
Pine trees, but yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
So, and they do it on the same day.
Wow.
No, stumps are,
That is another story.
Yeah. So we briefly, if we're done there, we briefly have to, Brett and I did meet about streetscapes. We have a plan of action. And that is, we actually have mentions of streetscape scattered throughout our guidelines. And so our thought would be that we need in each book, we need a section that is just streetscape.
Okay, yeah.
And so that if you look at the table of contents for book 2, you end up with a section that is design guidelines for your character areas. You end up with a section that is site design and a section that is building design. We would be doing a section 4 that is streetscape.
Does that include the sidewalks?
Wait, section 4 is streetscape. And the thing we discover is you have to actually go through the elements of streetscape for each character area, because residential
Yeah.
differs from commercial, differs from whatever. So the section, would say section 4, streetscape, and the chapters would continue our chapter number, but first chapter would be for the book 2 would be the historic residential, second chapter would be the historic mixed use, third chapter would be the historic commercial, fourth chapter would be the historic hillside. Underneath each chapter heading, you have the elements that we're talking about for streetscape.
Oh,
Those elements include, I don't have my list.
Street sidewalks, street landscaping, street lighting, signage, parking lots, and site furnishings.
And that's the list of things under each character area. Now, each one of those won't get its own separate page. I mean, maybe you can.
Could be a section, but
Yeah, maybe you can fit, it would be
depends on.
just like this there.
Sidewalks, lighting, signage. All right, thanks.
And what Batman has done unbelievably is go through both of these books and highlight what the street, what the guidelines that we already have scattered around about streets,
Pull all those.
so that we can
I had
assess.
copy pasted it, Jeff.
Eventually, we'll pull those out, and so we have a beginning thing under. And book 3, is that they have far more character areas, so but it would still have a section 4, it would go by the character areas, they would contain the same elements. We will start populating it with what we already have,
okay.
and then we will come back with this is what we've got for these various areas, and we as a group can then look at it and say, okay, but this ought to include this ought to include that.
That's great.
Because what we will find is what we're spotty as all get out.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
pretty
We've been very specific about what kind of surface you can have in a parking lot in a District 3. And we have not been very specific about what you can have in a parking lot in District 1. So you will find that we have basically had a spotty set of this. And if that format seems to work for you guys,
Yeah,
That's great.
Is the pedestrian ways kind of included in that, or are we just leaving those separate?
sidewalks are.
Sidewalks are in there, and some of them talk about it, but not very much detail.
Yeah, okay.
But the sidewalks definitely is, and we differentiate, the sidewalks in front of your house or walkways on your property.
Yeah,
there's sidewalks in front of your house.
Right away.
on the street.
Okay, so your sidewalk is public.
Yeah, sidewalk
Yeah.
is public, and it's in front of your house, or it's where the public can go, but the minute you
Oh,
come
I
to
described everything.
your fence line,
Oh.
those are walkways around
What
your.
about the tree line section?
Am I supposed to sign that? I've never.
Oh, yeah, that's in there. He-
Landscape is mentioned, that's considered the side boundary or side.
You mean the
edge.
big sides?
Yeah, but I'm about to plant a whole lot of low growing veronica in the tree lines.
Well, that's not mentioned, because that's
Oh, I
under
know.
15 inches.
Okay,
Yeah, but if that sounds
This is
like
just
a
mine.
good,
Yeah.
good way to go,
That sounds
we will,
great.
we will
We'll
start,
keep going.
we'll keep
yeah,
going.
nice,
That's great.
thank you.
Thank you.
So we have,
So we have minutes to approve.
Oh, yeah, I had a couple of comments.
Okay.
I had to do sliding now. In the, discussion of Joyce Smith and Brian Stanton, next to the last line before the sightings.
Mr. Allen.
He will also send the approved, says aggregate requirements. You know, we'll change aggregate to concrete finish requirements
Great finish.
to Kasia, which I gave her that at the last, you got that.
Okay.
And then on the preliminary review, cleared line up from the bottom in the middle. It talks about, there will need to be a riser midway up, that should say landing. And you might change will to may.
So how does it read? There may need to be.
There may need to be a landing midway up.
Which I think Sean described it as a riser, I don't care.
Well,
I'm changing it, but I think it's what he calls it.
There's gonna be a riser every, well,
Every step.
Every step's a riser.
As a riser.
there will be risers.
Can't go through the note that one.
Oh, and then on the back, under the Bighorn projects, under the bullet for proposed streetlights, are not approved commercial Cobra head style light, get rid of the not approved. They are, the proposed streetlights are Cobra head style lights on 20-foot poles, and they're not acceptable.
They're not acceptable. Unfortunately,
Well, they're too high.
yes, they're way too high.
Oh, and our light poles, our tops for the lights at Scouts Park have arrived. The poles went somewhere else.
And they're telling, and he is telling that it is 22 to 26 weeks to get poles for the Argentine street shop.
So our electrician is trying to track that down, and I mean, it's been ordering streetlights, is the most complicated thing I have ever dealt with. Because they go, you can't deal directly with the manufacturer, they have to go through a distributor who has to sell them to a local supply house.
Yes.
So by the time you get to talk, so I've been talking to the local distributor in Denver, and as long as you keep on top of them, like every day, you eventually get results. I've been working on Cindy's streetlights and the Argentine streetlights since the beginning of February. I have a price for all of it, but I only want two prices, one for her stuff and one for the town stuff.
I don't want the top to end the polls.
Oh, I would make the motion to approve the minutes as correct. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
All right.
And we are particularly noisy group.
we had a lot of internal stuff to talk about.
Brandon, I don't know if you guys do anything, but the 7th Street Bridge materials are gonna be delivered in August.
August, talk about 17 weeks, 17 weeks.
We ordered,
August, so. But they're ordered, so.
Right, no, I want to turn the Argentine street out. The construction, my dudes for the construction cost index